the most evil Karens reacting to life sentences.
I got up off the floor and I grabbed the gun and I shot him.
I intentionally killed her.
I don't feel no remorse for the death of them demons.
These women's response to their fate was as shocking as their crimes. So, prepare yourselves as we reveal the chilling reactions of some of the most notorious female criminals.
How can you imagine? She's his only son. No face. Can't even kiss him on the forehead. That's something I couldn't wrap my brain around. Because they had to see him on a metal slab.
This is Shayna Hubers. She is convicted of murder for shooting her boyfriend 6 times. Hubers appeared for her verdict hearing in the Campbell County Circuit Court in Newport, Kentucky. She was charged with 1 count of murder after shooting her boyfriend 6 times because he was about to leave her for a Miss USA contestant.
My name is Cicely Miller, and I was housed with Shannon Huber. I was like, man, girl, what'd you do? What happened? And so she was like, well, I shot my boyfriend. I said, did you kill him? She goes, yeah. She goes, I shot him in the face. I gave him the job he always wanted. She cackled. She was like, and just had this cackle, and it just went right through me.
In 2011, 28-year-old Ryan Poston met Shayna Hubers, a psychology student at the University of Kentucky, through his step-cousin on Facebook. They hit it off and began dating. But their relationship was marked by passionate reunions and tumultuous breakups over 18 months. By October 12, 2012, their relationship reached a breaking point. Ryan, 29-year-old at the time, had plans for a date with Miss Ohio USA 2012, Audrey Bolte, a meeting that would never happen.
I believe Shannon just knew it was over. You know, that this was the last straw. He was done with her, and you're out of here. And she wasn't having that. You don't turn your back and say no to her.
During the trial, Audrey Bolte testified for the prosecution, describing her interactions with Ryan in detail.
For some help and a review of some movies that were going on at the time, and he had replied to one of them and left a funny, interesting comment.
How did he strike you?
Funny and smart.
Shayna discovered his plans with Audrey through Facebook messages, which ignited a rage of jealousy and desperation in her.
I got up off the floor and I grabbed the gun and I shot him.
Shayna maintained that the incident was an act of self-defense. However, in the courtroom, the prosecution, led by Michelle Snodgrass, argued otherwise. They contended that Shayna's actions on that fateful October night were not self-defense, but the result of a relationship she couldn't bear to see end. They painted a picture of a premeditated act driven by jealousy and obsession.
So for 3 more times, she raises the gun and fires into Ryan Poston's twitching body until she fired the final shot where she knew it would kill him.
She picked up the gun and said,
"What would you do if I shot you?"
The defense, however, stood firm on the assertion that Shayna was a victim, not a perpetrator. They contended that she had acted in self-defense after enduring an abusive relationship with Ryan.
Degrading her own self-worth. I can't love you. No one can love you. You can't orgasm because you were touched as a child, and no one will ever love you.
Looking back on it, I feel like I was led on. I feel like I was manipulated, used, and abused.
However, the jury was swayed by the prosecution's argument and recommended a severe punishment of 40 years in prison. Hubers' legal team sought a new trial, arguing that evidence supporting her self-defense claim had been unfairly excluded. They also petitioned for her to be recognized as a victim of domestic violence, which could reduce her time served before parole eligibility. Despite these efforts, the jury still handed a guilty verdict.
But I listened to everything that was said in here. I never heard a word or a look that said, I'm sorry to these people back here.
Just once to hear the words, I shouldn't have done that.
As the jury read the verdict, Shayna Hubers broke down in tears.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Shayna Hubers,
guilty of murder under instruction number 5.
Hubers was sentenced to 40 years with the possibility of parole after serving 20 years.
It's certainly not justice, no, because justice in this case can't be given in the courtroom.
I don't believe Shayna has learned her lesson. And if she was to get out on parole, I believe she would find another victim. If it was up to me, Shayna would rot in a cell like this. So Ryan's family can have justice that she would never see the light of day outside of a jail cell.
This is Mitchell Blair. She is about to receive the ultimate punishment at Wayne County Circuit Court. The 35-year-old Michelle Blair is facing charges of first-degree murder for the death of her daughter and felony murder for the death of her son.
Everybody want to know, yes, I did kill her!
In 2015, an ordinary day in Detroit's Martin Park neighborhood turned into a nightmare. On a routine March morning, bailiffs arrived at Michelle Blair's townhouse for an eviction and made a shocking discovery. As they removed the furniture, a strong smell hinted at something sinister. Their search led them to a white freezer in the corner of the room. Opening it, they found the frozen remains of a child wrapped in a blanket. Further inspection revealed another child's body, similarly hidden. The victims were later identified as Blair's children, 13-year-old Stoney Blair and her 9-year-old brother, Stephen Barry. Mitchell Blair was arrested and taken to court. Throughout the hearings, Blair showed no remorse and boldly admitted to killing her children before the judge.
I intentionally killed her.
I don't feel no remorse for the death of them demons.
Keep in mind, these were her kids she was talking about.
Why did you take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other in a freezer?
What do you mean?
Why did you do that?
Well, I only had one deep freezer. You mean take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other? Where was she gonna go?
How did you conceivably sleep at night?
I slept well.
And you feel no remorse for that?
I would kill him again.
Throughout the trial, Blair maintained that she killed her children, Stephen and Stoney, after discovering they were sexually assaulting her youngest son. However, no evidence was ever found to support her accusations. During Blair's sentencing, Judge Dana Hathaway had a few words to say before passing her judgment.
It's the greatest tragedy here is that they will never know what a life is like without experiencing fearing their mother. They will never know the joy of what could have been in their life without having you in it. They lived in terrible fear of you. And I find that just so sad in this case.
With that, the judge handed down her sentence.
After all is said and done, you imposed the death penalty on your own children.
I did.
And you readily admit it, and you want to take responsibility of it. You're therefore sentenced to the Michigan Department of Corrections for the rest of your life without the possibility of parole, meaning, of course, that you will never get out.
While the sentence was being handed down, Mitchell Blair's face was stoic, showing absolutely no remorse. Mitchell Blair is currently in prison, where she will remain for the rest of her life.
Can you talk me through the type of abuse that you had to suffer as a kid?
You mean sexual abuse?
If that's what happened.
That definitely did happen to me. That's why I know exactly how would have grew up. I told my mother what happened to me. And the only thing she said was, it's over with, so what the you want me to do about it? What do you mean what I want you to do? You get what I'm saying? So all I could do is go back and sit in my room and just sit there and look stupid. I'm a kid. And I'm just telling you what happened to me. You didn't do about it. And plus I still had to see the person coming in and out my house. You're still friends with that person.
So do you believe that the violent person you went on to become you were a product of your own childhood?
I mean, everybody have choices, so I can't just blame all that on my mom because I was still an adult. Maybe I should have tried hard to get over that. But anybody who knows me, that touching the kids, the molesting, that no. If that's one thing I definitely would have killed over, it would have always been that.
This is Dinah Lane. She cut a baby from a stranger's womb. Yeah, you heard that right. In 2015, Dinah Lane, a former nurse aide, fabricated an elaborate lie convincing everyone she was pregnant. She wore a fake pregnancy belly, doctored ultrasound images, and even held a baby shower. As her fictitious due date neared, the pressure to produce a baby grew unbearable, leading Lane to devise a sinister plan. Dinah Lane set up a fake Craigslist ad targeting pregnant mothers. On March 18, 2015, 26-year-old Michelle Wilkins responded to the ad and visited Lane. Once there, Lane attacked Michelle, brutally cutting her baby from her womb in an act of desperate violence. During the course of the trial, Michelle Wilkins described what had happened to her in court.
I remember she was trying so hard to choke me, and then when she got closer, she just bore down with her whole weight on the heel of her hand over my windpipe. And I just remember everything going black.
Wilkins awoke to the horrifying realization of the violent act Lane had committed on her body.
And I tried to move, and I just felt this really intense pain in my stomach. And I looked down and, I just saw this really big cut across my stomach.
In the aftermath of the assault, Michelle's survival instincts kicked in. Despite her severe injuries, she managed to lock herself in a room and dial 911.
Asking for help. Because, just staying present was really difficult at the time.
The call to 911 prompted a swift response from emergency services, who arrived quickly. They found Michelle in a state of shock, her abdomen brutally cut open, the life she was nurturing cruelly ripped away. As Michelle clung to life, the police began to piece together the events that had transpired. Dinah Lane, meanwhile, had arrived at the hospital with the deceased baby, claiming to have suffered a miscarriage. Lane was arrested and charged with attempted murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and 4 counts of felony assault. During Dinah Lane's sentencing hearing, Michelle Wilkins delivered a heartfelt and emotional address to the court.
You embrace your narcissistic fantasy to fulfill the lie you created, and it was more important than my right to live and Aurora's right to live.
After Michelle Wilkins' statement, the judge was ready to hand down the sentence.
Ms. Lane planned this attack and left Ms. Wilkins to bleed out and die.
As the judge hands her sentence, Dinah Lane cries silently.
Ms. Lane is to be sentenced to a sentence the court finds, having considered the mitigating circumstances and the aggravating circumstances, that totals 100 years in the Department of Corrections.
Dinah Lane is currently serving her lengthy prison term. This is Shanda Vander Ark. She was found guilty of open murder and first-degree child abuse for the death of her 15-year-old son, Timothy Ferguson. Back in July 2022, police responded to the family home in Norton Shores and found Timothy dead. Officers said Timothy was emaciated and weighed only 69 pounds. His body also showed signs of hypothermia. Timothy had autism and was speech and motor impaired. Yet Vander Ark and her older son, Paul Ferguson, punished Timothy by feeding him hot sauce, putting him in ice baths for hours, depriving him of sleep, and locking the refrigerator and food cabinets. When shown photos of her emaciated, disabled son, who she starved and murdered, this was Vander Ark's reaction.
You look like that when you put in the bathtub?
I'm sorry.
Muskegon County Prosecutor DJ Hilson called the situation the most disturbing case he has seen in his career. 2 of Vander Ark's children spoke at the sentencing.
I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible. I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else.
So now I turn to the justice system in hopes that in addition to serving the maximum penalty, that there will be no appeals or second chances. If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back.
Judge Matthew Castle then spoke directly to Vander Ark before he read her sentence.
I'm not going to let you hide in the darkness anymore. People know what you are now. They know what you did. You're not able to hide in the darkness anymore. Timothy won. And he won because we know what you did to him now. It's not hidden anymore. We know who you are. That's the way that I'm going to honor him. It's a sentence of the court. First as to count 2, child abuse in the first degree. Court sentences you 50 years to 100 years in prison. As to count 1, felony murder. It's a sentence of the court. You serve a term within the Michigan Department of Corrections for the rest of your natural life without parole.
This is Taylor Shaw Business. She appeared before a judge for a competency hearing to assess whether she could understand the court proceedings and assist in her defense. In February of 2022, 25-year-old Taylor Shaw Business was involved in a case that seemed ripped from a horror novel. Taylor and her lover, 24-year-old Shad Therian, were together one night when their usual routine took a dark turn. After smoking meth, Taylor, in a fit of drug-induced rage, strangled Shad to death with a chain in the basement of his mother's house. However, the horror did not end there. In the hours that followed, authorities claimed that Taylor Shaw Business sexually abused Shad's lifeless body before proceeding to dismember him. Panicked and in shock, Shaw Business immediately contacted the authorities. Shaw Business was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault. During the competency hearing, Judge Thomas Walsh presided, while attorney Quinn Jolly represented Shaw Business. An expert hired by the defense was expected to testify in the coming days, but Jolly stated that the doctor needed more time to complete his report.
Our doctor is requesting 2 additional weeks to finish preparation and evaluation of report.
Judge Walsh granted the motion, pushing back the start date of the trial to allow for a comprehensive assessment.
During the trial, and I'm looking at week of May 15th for the trial.
And in that moment, Shaw Business jumped out of her chair and lunged at her attorney in a fit of uncontrolled anger. Watch it from this angle. The court officers sprang into action and restrained her. The deputies were able to remove her and place her in a holding cell. Once order was restored and the hearing reconvened, Jolly, who had remarkably sustained no injuries during the attack, requested to withdraw as Shaw Business's attorney.
At this point, I'm going to put a motion in the withdrawal from this matter.
Judge Walsh granted Jolly's motion to withdraw, and Shaw Business was assigned a new attorney from the State Public Defender Office. Notably, she faced no additional charges for the attack on Jolly. Taylor Shaw Business was sentenced to life in prison without parole for killing and dismembering her boyfriend. This is Jennifer Mee in the Pinellas County Justice Center. At 19 years old, she was arrested on charges of first-degree murder. But this wasn't the first time Mee grabbed the public's attention. When she was 15 years old, she gained international fame when she developed a case of uncontrollable hiccups.
4 weeks ago tomorrow. Pains, throat pains, back pains. It's unbelievable.
She was initially known as the Hiccup Girl, but that all ended when her hiccups were cured and the media had no more interest in her until she was arrested. Mee was accused of setting up a robbery with victims she had met online. She had reportedly recruited Lamont Newton, her boyfriend at the time, and another friend, Laren Rayford, to help rob victims. Mee met up with a 22-year-old man she encountered online. She lured the man to a vacant home, and her 2 friends robbed and shot the man, which killed him. They got $50 for the robbery and murder. Mee, Rayford, and Newton all lived together and were arrested within hours of the crime. When Mee had first got arrested, she was in jail, and she had a phone call with her mother where she admitted to her involvement, and the conversation ended up being recorded.
This call may be recorded or monitored. I have a free call from
Jennifer Mee
an inmate at Pinellas County Jail.
I got charged for murder in the first degree.
Charged for murder in the first degree?
Yes, sir.
What charges included you kill?
I didn't do nothing. I was just there at the wrong time, at the wrong place. Hello? Hi, Mama. Hello, Sheriff. What's going on? I'm in jail. Why are you in jail? From murder in the first degree. Who'd you kill? I ain't killed nobody. Because I set everything up. It all went wrong, Mama.
The jury returned a guilty verdict, and Mee was found guilty of first-degree murder.
We, the jury, defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged.
And now the judge will hand down the sentence.
The jury having found you guilty of murder in the first degree, Miss Mee, I will adjudicate you guilty and sentence you to life in prison without parole. I'm ordering the 550 standard life in court court. You have 30 days to appeal. Yeah, okay?
Her co-defendants, Rayford and Newton, were also convicted of first-degree felony murder and were sentenced to life in prison. This is Camia Gamet, who is charged with the murder of her boyfriend in Jackson, Mississippi. Reportedly, the attack happened during an argument between the two individuals and ended with a boyfriend being violently stabbed to death. Gamet was arrested on first-degree murder charges. Throughout the trial, Gamet claimed she acted in self-defense and showed no remorse, even when the victim's family members addressed the court during the sentencing hearing.
I still remember the cries of help that he screamed as you plunged that knife in and out of his body.
We have no choice but to send her where she will also die. I can't believe she stands before you doing this.
While the victim's family members spoke, Gamet rolled her eyes, smirked, and mouthed words. However, Judge John McBain would not tolerate her behavior.
And you're gonna shut your mouth or I'm gonna have some duct tape put on it.
But that didn't end it. Camille Gamet's nonchalant attitude only escalated as she addressed the court.
The way I was portrayed, mostly everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted off of lies.
With Gamet showing no remorse, the judge had some final words.
You stab, you stab, you stab, you stab until he was dead. I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
In the end, Gamet was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is Cristal Candelario. She is facing charges of 1 count of aggravated murder and 1 count of endangering children at Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court.
She was a mother. She got a title that means something in this world.
In the summer of 2022, Cristal Candelario left her 16-month-old daughter, Jalyn, alone in a playpen with a few bottles of milk while she went on a 10-day vacation. Candelario was in Puerto Rico with a male friend enjoying the beach and later stopping in Detroit. In court, prosecutors revealed footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera, capturing Jalyn's frequent screams.
Around 1:04 a.m. in the morning that you hear this child crying.
If you listen closely, you can actually hear Candelario's daughter crying. Let's play it again. When Cristal Candelario returned home, she discovered the lifeless body of her daughter. Jalyn had been trapped without food, water, or her mother's care. In a state of panic, she called 911. Candelario was immediately arrested and charged.
She didn't want this to happen. You could hear that.
During the sentencing hearing, the prosecution and the police laid out the harrowing details of the case, painting a picture of a mother who had forsaken her most sacred duty.
This baby loved her mother. She needed her mother, and her mother betrayed her.
Candelario was given a chance to speak during the hearing. Addressing the court through an interpreter, she expressed remorse, asking for forgiveness from the society she had shocked and from the daughter she had lost.
I'm extremely hurt about everything that happened.
No estoy tratando de justificar mis actos.
I'm not trying to justify my actions.
Pero nadie sabe cuánto yo estaba sufriendo.
But nobody knew how much I was suffering.
Y por lo que estaba pasando.
And what I was going through.
It was then time for the judge to hand down a sentence. But before he did, he had this to say.
The bond between a mother and a child is one of the most purest and most sacred bonds between human beings. Yet, in a shocking and betrayal of this fundamental trust, you committed the ultimate act of betrayal.
The judge then handed down the sentence.
You should spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. The only difference will be that prison will at least feed you.
Cristal Candelario is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. This is Mackenzie Sharilla. She's a 17-year-old who was found guilty of murder for causing a car crash that killed her boyfriend and his friend.
Mackenzie decided death was the ultimate goal that day. This was not reckless driving. This was murder.
Sharilla's boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend, Davin Flanagan, were in the car when she crashed into the side of a commercial building outside of Cleveland, going 100 miles per hour. Both men were pronounced dead at the scene, and Sharilla survived. Prosecutors argued that the teen had a toxic relationship, and Sharilla had made violent threats against her boyfriend.
Threatened his property? She threatened to break into his house?
Correct.
Reportedly, she crashed her car on purpose because she wanted to kill her boyfriend, and that his friend was just collateral damage. The prosecutor said the intent was obvious. Upon seeing that video, that there was only one goal.
You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
And a few days before the crash, she allegedly took the same route to plot the crime. This is where the judge now finds her guilty.
Count 1. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sherrillo, guilty of murder, to wit Dominic Russo.
She now stands up to be placed in handcuffs as she continues to tear up.
Count 2. Finds the defendant, Mackenzie Sherrillo, guilty of murder, to wit Davion Flanagan.
Now has a moment to speak before her sentencing.
The families of Dom and Davion, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken.
There was no medical condition that caused this as an accident. There was no mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. There's a very good likelihood, Mackenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. She's sentenced on count 1, 15 years to life. Count 2, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other.
Just sentenced her to 15 years to life in prison. This is Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusari, a religious farming couple living in Cedar Springs, Michigan, and they are charged with murder of their 10-month-old girl, Mary Welch. Reportedly, they told police they noticed the baby was skinny and underweight, but did not seek medical attention because of their religious beliefs and mistrust of medicine and the government. This is the 911 call of the father when he reportedly found his child dead.
How long ago did you find this child?
It's about an hour and a half. I was waiting. I called my lawyer first thing to ask, what's the next thing I could do.
So you found the child an hour and a half ago?
Yeah.
And called your lawyer first, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time you had contact with the child?
Last night, yesterday afternoon, about 3 p.m. She goes to bed, and, that was that.
Okay, so you put her to bed yesterday at 3 p.m.?
Yeah, and then this morning at, 10.
So you're saying it's normal for your children to sleep from around 3 p.m. till 10 a.m.?
Usually about 9:30, yeah.
And you said when you found her, she was already believed to be deceased, right?
Yes.
And that's when you consulted with a lawyer?
Yep.
Do you believe she was beyond help already?
Oh, yeah, she was dead as a doormat.
Soon after, the autopsy revealed that the cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration due to neglect by the adult caregivers. And this is the moment they realize they will be spending the rest of their life behind bars.
Charge called homicide, felony murder. It is life without parole. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment or any term of years less than life.
This is Shelby Isaac. She is accused of first-degree murder for the deaths of Eddie Tate and his girlfriend, Edwina Thomas, who was 8 weeks pregnant at the time. The 19-year-old Shelby Isaac is appearing before the judge for a verdict hearing in Memphis, Tennessee. The events unfolded nearly 2 years prior to the trial, rooted in a transaction that on the surface seemed mundane, a purchase of hair extensions valued at $250. Yet this was no ordinary exchange. The prosecution painted a picture of a deal gone aria, alleging that Isaac, dissatisfied with her purchase, arranged a second meeting with Tate under the guise of rectifying the situation. It was during this encounter that Shelby allegedly shot and killed Eddie and his pregnant girlfriend.
She took the time to extend her arm, pointed at these people, pointed in the direction of Edwina Thomas. Then we know that she decided to pull the trigger at least 6 times.
The defense, however, challenged the narrative, pointing to a glaring absence of physical evidence linking Isaac to the crime.
When you follow the credible and unbiased evidence in this case, it does not lead you to Shelby Isaac.
The jury tasked with determining Isaac's fate deliberated over the evidence presented. After intense scrutiny, they reached a verdict that would seal the young woman's future. Judge James Lammy, who presided, read out the verdict.
We, the jury, find the man guilty. Reckless homicide as included in count 3.
Upon hearing the verdict, Isaac's composure shattered, leading to a dramatic outburst in court. The 19-year-old collapsed to the floor. Isaac remained on the floor as deputy tried to revive her. Shelby Isaac was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with no possibility of release until 2040. This is Diana Lovejoy. She used to be married to Greg Mulvihill, living in Carlsbad, California. But soon their marriage fell apart and they divorced. After a messy divorce and lots of legal trouble, it ended with the court ordering Diana to pay $120,000 to Greg for his stake in their family house. The court also ordered that she must share custody of their son. Diana became furious about hearing the court orders. So, she planned to kill her ex-husband by teaming up with her boyfriend Weldon McDavid. Greg was shot in the torso, but luckily the bullet didn't hit his heart and he survived. Both McDavid and Diana conspired to murder, and the court has sufficient evidence against them.
It's so painful that some people in this world seem to think that I would have it in me to do this.
Interestingly, she fainted in court. She lowered her head down toward the defense table for a few seconds.
Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Diana Jean Lovejoy, guilty of the crime of attempted murder of Greg Mulvihill.
And right when you hear guilty, you hear a thud.
Guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
It silenced the courtroom, aside from hearing her family cry in the background.
We're going to need to take a break.
She then is brought onto the floor. And when medics bring her out, she still appears to be passed out. But doctors later found out she had only fainted. Weldon McDavid received 50 years to life in prison because he was the one that pulled the trigger. And Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. This is Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy, who are both in court today for the murder of their friend when they were only 16 years old.
Their scheme was to hide knives on their bodies and to attack Skylar at an agreed-upon moment.
In Star City, West Virginia, Schoaf and Eddy were friends with 16-year-old Skylar Neese. Reportedly, Schoaf and Eddy decided they didn't like Neese anymore, so they planned to kill her.
Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf carried out that plan. Together they stabbed and killed Skylar.
After Schoaf's confession, both teens were arrested. Schoaf agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for her cooperation in the case.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done. I hurt the Neese family and those who love Skylar. I hurt my parents and shamed my family. May God bring eternal peace to Skylar and the entire Neese family.
After securing a plea deal, the judge now gives Schoaf her sentence.
Rachel Schoaf, it is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years.
But she will have the possibility of parole in 10 years. And now for Eddy.
It is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for the rest of your natural life. That sentence is technically with mercy, which makes you eligible for parole after you have served 15 years.
This is Kimberly Kessler, who is charged with the murder of her co-worker in Nassau County, Florida.
Jordan Beard is Jolene Cummings' cousin.
Kessler was working at a Tangles hair salon under a fake name. She reportedly was on the run for 25 years and wanted in several states. She wouldn't be found until she brutally murdered her co-worker with scissors and allegedly disposed of her body. This is Kessler, after she was arrested and awaiting trial.
Are we on mute anyway, so I can say whatever the I want?
We're not on mute.
Oh, okay.
And this is what it was like to supervise her in jail.
She began to remove feces from styrofoam trays in the back of her cell and smear it on herself on the walls. She began to throw feces at Smith, Miller, and I.
Now in the trial, she had to go to a separate room due to her outbursts.
I refuse it. I have refused it. I refuse the public defender's office. They appointed Jolie Clemming's cousin as my public defender. What, you don't want the public to know that?
And she continuously made false claims about her former public defender.
Jordan Beard is Jolie Clemming's cousin. Jordan Beard is Jolie's cousin.
She was later found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham. They were both charged with homicide by child abuse in Summerville, South Carolina. Butts, who was best friends with the child's mother, was supposed to be caring for the toddler for 2 weeks. The child was only 3 years old. She died from her injuries, reflecting weeks of torture, a time frame that matched the time she had spent with Butts and her lover at the time, Cunningham.
What must have been the excruciating sounds that came from that child is more than disconcerting to this court.
After both women were found guilty, the judge now hands down their sentence.
The court finds it appropriate that each be sentenced to the State Department of Corrections for a period of life.
They were just sentenced to life in prison. Butts and Cunningham are reportedly at separate prisons serving their life sentences. This is Amanda Sperduti. She was charged with driving drunk and felony death by motor vehicle in a wreck that killed her friends. In 2010, 20-year-old Amanda Sperduti and her friends, 18-year-old Sasha Adela Hoffman and Taylor Lee McCaskill, and 23-year-old Scott Wayne Bedwell, set off for a party after drinking at a friend's house with a blood alcohol level of 20, more than twice the legal limit. Sperduti lost control of the car, speeding at 90 mph in a 45 zone. She veered off the road, hitting a street sign and then a tree. The impact tore the car in half, and all 3 passengers were pronounced dead at the scene. During the sentencing hearing, the parents of the victims gave heartfelt testimonies. Scott Wayne, Bedwell's father, staring directly at Amanda, delivered his with a heavy heart.
You can still talk to your mother, you can cry with your mother, and eventually you'll laugh with your mother. I cannot. I want to hug my boy.
Taylor McCaskill's grandmother also had some poignant words to share during the hearing as McCaskill's parents wept in the courtroom.
My life has been changed forever, and Lord, I know you can't possibly need Taylor as much as her mother and I did.
Sperduti broke down into tears during each of the testimonies. At some point during the hearing, Amanda Sperduti emotionally addressed the court.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I suffer from it every day of my life. I'm so messed up. I suffer from this every single day of my life. I will for the rest of my life.
Amanda Sperduti was sentenced to 7 to 12 years in prison for aggravated felony death by motor vehicle.